Hey everyone, welcome back again. And today we are going to discuss one of the exciting, topic in our Indian writing in English, and which is also our chapter 2, the origin and development of Indian writing in English. And let me tell you one thing. English did not enter India as a friend. It arrived wrapped in power, policies, and prejudice, but over century it became a paradox, a tool of oppression that Indians turned into a voice of resistance. This is not just the story of language, it's the story of transformation. And let me ask you something strange. How did a language that arrived in India through colonizer end up becoming the language in which we now write poetry, apply for a job, and even crack the UGC NET exam? How did our ancient text written in Sanskrit, Tamil, Pali end up being studied in what? English translation funded by colonial rulers? Do you know that the very people who ruled us, some of them also admired our knowledge system deeply? Take example for William Jones, and he once said Indian were no less than European in imagination and philosophy. And can you guess, this was also asked in your exam as well. So what really happened? Was English forced upon us, or did we transform into something of our own? Today we are not just learning literature, we are stepping into a timeline where education, policies, culture and language collided, where ancient Upanishad met modern education policies, where libraries became kind of battlegrounds, where minutes, dispatches and Gazette wrote the script of our academic destiny. And here's the exciting part. Every single thing we'll cover today has either shaped the syllabus or was directly asked in your exam. So sit back, stay curious, and this isn't just a history, it's a strategy. And this is how you're going to crack UGC NET English, by understanding why they ask and what they ask. So let's begin where it all starts, with a term that's both simple and deeply laid into our Indo-Anglian literature. You may wonder, isn't that just Indian writing in English? Yes, but also so much more. It's not just a stream, it's a synthesis, a literary identity born out of collision and creation. And this topic was actually asked in your exam. Now, here's the interesting part. Indo-Anglian literature didn't just happen. Its roots are not in myths or a speculation like the Vedas or epics. It has a traceable history, one that flows from trade routes and textbooks, from translation and treatise, and yes, from colonizers and classrooms. Let's decode it using Hippolytine's theory. He said literature is shaped by what? Race, milieu, and moment. Let me break it down for you. First, race. It's not about your skin or blood. In our case, it's about identity, the blend of Aryan, Dravidian, Mughal, and European influence. The second is, which is milieu. That's our environment, a subcontinent of many tongues, faiths, and philosophy. The last one, which is very important, actually that changed everything, that moment. The British stepped in, and the printing press, the classroom, the Bible in Bengali, the Bhagavad Gita in English, and this was actually the moment. And it wasn't just political, it was poetic also. Then Vasco da Gama lands in Calcutta in 1498. Then came the Portuguese, Dutch, French, British with ships, guns, and also dictionaries. And amidst all this chaos, a strange thing happened. And can you guess what was it? Indians started writing back in English. And that's the moment Indo-Anglian literature took its first breath. British Ascendancy historical phases, very important because it has asked in your exam. So before the British ruled India, they traded, and before they governed, they gambled. And gambled with what? Spices, silk, and ships. Let's quickly break down the three historical phases of British ascendancy in India, because it was asked in your exam as well. So first, let me tell you about the first phase, which was trading phase, 1612 to 1757. They weren't king in the beginning, right? They were just merchants. The British East India Company set up factories in Surat, Machilipatnam, Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta, and they were one of many players like Portuguese, Dutch, French, Danes, all sharing the same spice game, right? The second phase is, which is very important, company rule. And if you just pen out in dates, it'll be like 1757 to 1858. Uh, the battles like Plassey 1757 and Buckshire 1764, two battles that completely turned traders into rulers. By 1793 they wiped out local control in Bengal. The company now had an army, tax system and territory. Then the last phase is British Raj, which happened 1858 to 1947. So you remember that 1857 revolt, right? The British crown stepped in, the East Indian Company was dissolved, and India was now an official colony. Presidency like Bengal, Bombay, and Madras were chopped into what provinces for easier control. So this topic was also asked in your exam. So it's very important. The next, we are going to talk about the introduction of English and rise of modern education in colonial India. So English didn't just walk into India, right, with a red coat and a sword. It came with books, missionaries, and printing presses. The story starts, as early as 1700. English medium school opened in Cadalore 1717, Bombay 1718, Calcutta 1720. In 1870, Hindu College is founded by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. David Hare and Heidi Hees, a kind of turning point in India's educational future. But he is the real literary twist actually. This topic was also asked in your exam. So the topic was like, in 1764 Sheikh Deen Muhammad publishes The Travel of Deen Muhammad, the first book in English by an Indian, because that's why it's very important topic for you exams perspective. And if you could say that's the birth of Indian authorship in English, you will be right, right? So meanwhile, Sir William Jones was busy laying down your intellectual foundation. He didn't just love Sanskrit, he proved it was linguistically linked to Greek and Latin. And very important quote that I'm gonna share, that he stated that the Sanskrit language, whatever be its antiquity, is of a wonderful structure, more perfect than the Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either. And in 1784, he founded what the Royal Asiatic Society of Bengal, a hub for Indo-European thought. Christian missionary also played a massive role, building schools, creating dictionaries, and opening presses. While Oriental colleges stagnated, the English model flourished, reshaping how Indians learned, read, and eventually how they wrote back. From textbooks to typefaces, from translation to the telegraph, English education was not just introduced, it was institutionalized. The second topic that we are going to talk about, cultural patronage and Orientalist institution in British India. Not every British official in India came with sword, right? Some came with Sanskrit dictionary, Persian grammar, and a deep love for Indian thought. And this topic eventually, was asked in your exam as well. Let's start with Warren Hastings, the first Governor General of who? Bengal. And he wasn't just a ruler, he was a patron of Indian wisdom. Under his leadership, what happened? Orientalism thrived. Then came Sir William Jones, a name you must remember. He said Indians were not inferior, not even in imagination or reasoning and philosophy. In 1784, he founded what Asiatic Society in Calcutta, which would later become the Royal Asiatic Society of Bengal. And the fun fact, Charles Wickens, an early member of this school, The society translated the Bhagavad Gita into English in 1785, the first ever. It didn't stop there. Across India, Orientalist kind of institution blossomed, flourished. You see Connemara Library in Chennai, Dhoniloka in Mysore, and Bhandarkar Oriental Institute in Pune. While they preserved classical Indian texts, translators like Raja Ram Mohan Roy's Upanishad and R.T.H. Griffith Ramayana and Mamta Nath Dutt, Mahabharat. They build literary bridges between India and Europe, and these translations weren't just scholarly, they laid a kind of foundation for Indo-Anglian literature as a serious academic field. Next, we're going to talk about the Charter Act of 1813 and English education agenda. Let's talk about the moment when education became policy and English became a mission. And this topic was asked in the exam. It's very important in exams perspective. The Charter Act of 1830 did two wonderful things. The first one was it ended the East India Company's trade monopoly except for tea, opium and China. And for the first time it set aside 1 lakh annually for education in India. But here's the twist, this wasn't just about schools, it was about control. There is very important theorist in a modern time that called Gauri Vishwanathan calls this the moment Britain took charge over India's moral and intellectual training. It's very important, it was asked in your exam. So it also opened the gates, for Christian missionaries, to teach religion, science, and English literature. The man behind it all, who was it? Charles Grant, the evangelist who kind of, called Indians one of the very disturbing things, right? Let me tell you. The people of Hindustan are a race of men, lamentably degenerated and base, retaining but a feeble sense of moral obligation, and pushed for English as the official medium, not just for governance but for also salvation. This led to a fierce debate. Orientalists wanted traditional Indian learning, and Anglicists, like Macaulay, wanted Western supremacy. And in 1835, Macaulay dropped the bomb by saying what? Can you guess? And it's also disturbing, right? A class of person, Indian in blood, but English in taste. That wasn't education, it was colonial engineering, right? The next topic we're going to talk about the evolution of English education. So education in colonial India didn't evolve kind of naturally. It was engineered, debated and contested. This topic was asked in the exam as well. So it began with the Charter Act of 1830, which gave us like two very good thing, like annual grant of 1 lakh for education we just discussed, and openly entry for Christian missionaries to blend the religion and education. So now enter one of the boldest voice of all time. Who was it? Raja Ram Mohan Roy. In 1823, he wrote a letter to Lord Amherst. Very important because it has asked in your exam. He wanted what? European instructors, modern science, not rituals, right? And practical subjects like maths, chemistry, and anatomy. And his argument was Sanskrit education was like medieval's Europe's scholastic system, outdated and ineffective. In the letter he said the improvement of the natives can only be expected by promoting a more liberal and enlightened system of instruction, embracing mathematics, natural philosophy, chemistry and anatomy with other useful sciences. Roy wasn't just kind of reforming education, he was redirecting India's future toward English, right? Imagine a classroom in the 1830s. Half the British officials say teach in Sanskrit and the other half says teach in English. So this topic was asked in the exam. This was the Orientalist or Anglicist debate. Orientalists preserve Indian knowledge system. Anglicist replaces them with what? Western science and literature. And can you guess what was the turning point? Lord William Bentinck, Governor General from 1828 to 1835. And what he's known for abolishing sati and thuggy. He also chose sides. He backed Anglicists. And the man with the pen, Thomas Babington Macaulay. His minute on English education, very important. You should pay more attention because your question will pop up from this section. So, what he said, one declared Indian literature as worthless, proposed to create a class of people Indian in blood but English in taste. And can you guess what he said? He famously said, we must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreter between us and the millions who we govern, a class of persons, Indians in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinion, in moral, and in intellect. This gave rise to the downward filtration theory. Very important for your exam and for your research also, right? It's like educate a few elites and let them filter knowledge to the rest. Fast forward to 1854, we get Wood's Despatch, the Magna Carta of colonial education, and that's very important. It was asked in your exam as well, and it kind of set up the educational department, university like in Calcutta, Bombay, Madras, and also schools in every district. Primary should be in a vernacular, high school should be in Anglo vernacular, and college completely should be in English. And promoted vocational and women's education, set up very important school, Bethune School for Girls by GED. Bethune, very important because it has asked in exam. So let's speed through three major education commission, each one a turning point and each one asked in your exam as well. Let me tell you about the Hunter Commission, 1882, set up after Crown rule began in 1858. Under Lord Ripon, chaired by Sir William Hunter, and report submitted, remember the date, 1884. And it was very important. It also supported female education and Muslim education. Next is Sadler Commission, 1917 to 1919. And it was actually appointed for Calcutta University. A reform led by who? Michael Ernest Sadler, very important, found a mismatch between schools and universities. So what he did, he recommended a 2 years intermediate stage, boosted women's education, advocated for residential teaching, focused university. Very important one is Radhakrishnan Commission, 1948, because twice or maybe three times they have asked in your exam, right? So it is actually post-independent shift, also known the Education Commission, and first major kind of review of higher education, chaired by our Radhakrishnan, who famously said, the use of English has created a serious gulf between the educated few and the masses of the people. It tends to create the impression that the people are divided into two nations. Remember, those who govern and those who are governed. Very important. It was asked in your exam recently, actually. So it also suggested like 3-year degree after 12 years of schooling, moral plus spiritual education, research focused teacher training, and UGC creation. It also criticized political interference in university. Okay, let's fast forward from the post-independence reform to the present day, with two milestone policy you must know. Both of these were actually asked in your exam. Mudaliar Commission, which was actually introduced in 1953, and it is also called the Secondary Education Commission, and it was headed by Dr. A. Lakshman Swamy Mudaliar, right? And it was actually aimed to fix modernized secondary education and suggested a 3-year structure, lower, higher, and secondary, and higher secondary, and introduced multi-purpose schools and vocational options, and emphasized guidance, counseling, and all-round development. Very important. Next one is Kothari Commission. Remember the date, 1966. It was also called National Education Commission. And if there is one commission that really tried to reimagine Indian education from the ground up, it was the Kothari Commission of 1966, and this was actually asked in your exam as well, not once but multiple times. Officially called the National Education Commission, and it laid a comprehensive blueprint for every stage of learning. Here's what it gave us: 10 plus 2 plus 3 structure, like school, then higher secondary, and then up to university. Then free and compulsory education for all children up to age 14, equal opportunity for girls, backward classes, and differently abled children. And it emphasized teacher training, the importance of science and maths, and the need for vocational education in agriculture and industry. And very important, on languages, it stresses on the regional language for primary and secondary stages, then adopt and implement the three language formula, promote Hindi as a link language, while also encouraging Sanskrit and international languages. Other key reforms: high quality textbook, national service and work experience in schools, exam must be reliable and valid, promote sports, mass literacy, part-time and correspondence education. So it kind of laid the foundation for the national policy on education, NPE, for like 1968. And what was the exact spirit of the recommendation? Let me quote it for you. So, English should be studied as a library language, especially at the university level, to access what literature in science and technology and for development. Very, very important, because it was asked in your exam. It also called for setting up new university, focus on improving research, postgraduate training, and maintaining uniform standard across the country. So one of the most important, policy in our recent time was NEP 2020, India's most transformative education reform in decades. Introduced 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 education structure, foundation for secondary, mother tongue till grade 5, universal early childhood education age 3 to 6, focus on critical thinking, not rote learning. Vocational training starts at grade 6, common college entrance exams, flexible degree with multiple entry, and one of the most important thing is HECI to replace UGC, AICTE, and others. Target, very important, 6% of GDP for education. It was asked in your exam. Now let me tell you one more important thing, and which is about Hicky's Bengal Gazette, India's first newspaper. So before your Twitter, before headlines, and long before TV, India's fight for free expression started with the bold Irishman and printing press. And this topic was asked in your exam as well. So remember, 1780, James Augustus Hicky launched Hicky's Bengal Gazette, the first newspaper printed in Asia, right from Calcutta, the capital of British India, right? He called it the original Calcutta General Advertiser. But this wasn't just a newsletter, it was a kind of rebellion in print. Hicky openly attacked Governor General Warren Hastings and mocked the East India Company and dared to say what others whispered. But freedom comes at a cost, right? His press was seized and the paper shut down in 1782. So still Hickey's Gazette a kind of became a symbol for press freedom, marking the birth of journalism in India. And institutional roots of English writing in India. This is very important topic, because Indian writing in English didn't begin with a poem or a novel, right? It became in classroom. This topic was asked actually in your exam. The Charter Act of 1813 planted the seed, as setting aside funds for education and allowing missionaries into India. Then came Raja Ram Mohan Roy, we already discussed, 1823. He wrote to what Lord Amaras: stop funding Sanskrit education, teach science, maths, and philosophy in English with European instructors. Next came what? Lord William Bentinck, right? We also have discussed. He was social reformer and his strategies. Under his rule, we got the English Education Act of 1835, and behind it, what was it? Macaulay's Minutes. And Macaulay's Minute didn't just insult Indian literature. He declared a single shelf of European books is worth the whole native literature of India. What an insult, right? His goal to create a class of Indians, English in taste, who could help govern the colony, and the result, a Western educated elite ready to read, think, and write in English. So that elite became the first generation of Indian English writer. So yes, before literature came literacy, and before poetry came what? Policy. Now, next important topic I really want to discuss is expansion through commission and policy. We already discussed a lot of about it earlier, but let me tell you more. So, Indian English writing didn't emerge in vacuum, right? It was nurtured by what? Policies, commissions, and classrooms. And this topic actually was asked in your exam. So, it started with, as Wood's Despatch of 1854, often called the Magna Carta. It was asked in your exam. And what it actually did: set up universities in Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. 1857, laid down three-level system: vernacular in primary, Anglo vernacular in secondary, and English in college. It was mandatory. So this structure ensured English slowly became what? The academic language. Later came we already discussed, right? Hunter Commission, 1882, focused on moral and practical education. Sadler Commission then came 1970, 1919, addressed university reform and pushed for female and Muslim education. And these commission didn't just expand access, they created a class of English educated Indians who could actually read Dickens, but also write about Delhi, master in Milton, but also speak for the masses. And that is where Indian writing in English found its voice in essays, poems, and journalism, and especially in politics. Now, let me tell you, one of the most important thing is Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras University. These were actually foundation of modern higher education, and this actually asked in your exam. So, before your IITs or IIMs, modern Indian higher education began with 3 universities, and one of the most powerful document. This topic was actually asked in your exam, and that document was what? Wood's Dispatch of 1854, complete blueprint for English education in India. Its most important move, because the establishment of university in Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras in 1857. But these weren't just like today's university, they were kind of modeled after the University of London, Oxford, right? They didn't teach, they conducted exams, as also granted degrees. Teaching was done through affiliated colleges. And now, as you know, the University of Calcutta was the first set up on January 24, 1857. Governor General served as Chancellor, had a Senate of 41 members, covered a huge area from Lahore to Ceylon, right? Bombay and Madras University soon followed the same pattern, creating a standardized English medium higher education system. So these institutions laid the intellectual foundation for civil service, academic research, and the early voices of Indian writing in English. Remember, these 3 cities had one policy: a new academic era was born. Now tell me, wasn't that something? Do you know every bit of what we just studied is made directly from actual UGC NET exam questions? We have cracked the pattern. We now know what UGC NET is really asking, and more importantly, why. And here's the best part: all these insights plus full detailed explanation, PYQs, revision notes, academic references, everything inside our book Indian Writing in English. And especially it's made for NET aspirants, written with clarity, precision, and purpose.